Peter Franklin, the Gabby Cabby is on right now. Good morning, Peter. Good morning.
Good morning, good morning. I have no bullets with me.
Well, listen, if you did have, well, we won't go there. Let's talk a little, by the way, did you see the prince there in England? The one who doesn't look like Prince Charles at all?
Well, the first I heard about the whole thing was when I got my invitation to the wedding.
Oh, you did? Yeah.
Yes, I did. And I can take one good friend along. I don't know who I'll pick, but just hang in there and maybe you'll be the lucky guy.
Well, the Queen seems all in on this. She seems quite happy that the prince is going to be getting married to an American, and even more so, she's biracial, Peter.
Yes, and that's really, England gets the rap for supposedly inventing slavery. So here we are centuries later, and wow, what a turnaround.
Yeah. And could you and just think about this for a second. Marrying an American, I mean, if you could go back 200 years, could you imagine?
I know.
And a biracial American. So it is quite interesting. Charlie Rose, what do you think there, Peter Franklin?
He's a bum. Yeah. I never liked him because I never liked his politics. So I guess I'm not being objective in thinking about the guy. But I don't know. These lechy guys talk a good game of liberalism, and then they turn out to be the sleazebags. So, but I think the punishment he's gotten has been kind of woohoo. So he's taken care of.
Isn't it interesting how quickly everywhere else in America reacts to these stories of sexual impropriety? Except Washington, which in Washington, you're going to last there. You're going to be okay, it seems.
Well, you got to admit, though, that the punishment given out to, like, Charlie and some of these other people is kind of getting in the time of being, punishment. So it might deter some people, but I don't know. Yeah. They old line, they say human nature, but it's just sleazy. And that's because most of us have wives or sisters or daughters, And so when this happens, you get this sort of, anger.
I want to ask you about, I'm pretty sure in Times Square there is a billboard right now in Times Square that is calling for the impeachment of President Trump.
Yeah, it's really quite the thing. I mean, it cost the guy millions of dollars to put it up. There's an interesting side story to that. I mean, that is the story, of course, that the guy spends all this money to put up a sign that says impeach Trump. But most people don't know that most of the office buildings in Times Square are empty. They don't have tenants in them. And the reason for that is that the owners of the building, for instance, Times Tower, which is right at 42nd Street and 7th Avenue, is empty. It doesn't have tenants because they make so much money on the signage. Why bother to have people in the buildings? So that building is really an empty building, but the guy who owns the building is making the fortune on the impeach sign.
Of course, they have usually, like, downstairs at the storefront, they'll have it. But you're saying upstairs, there's nothing.
It's not, like, who wants to be bothered with tenants if you don't need them?
Yeah. Let's see. How about the story of New York's century-old subway system engulfed in crisis? What's going on?
Well, I don't know. The thing, it's one of these things. All of a sudden, it's falling apart. Yeah. I mean, like 3 weeks ago, it wasn't falling apart. Now, all of a sudden, it's falling apart. So there's a big hurrah. And I think part of the problem is that Cuomo hates de Blasio hates Cuomo, so they can blame it on each other. I don't know. I mean, I ride the subways. Don't tell anybody, but I do. And I don't notice anything so terrible about them. I mean, they say they're crowded. Well, you got millions of people. They're dirty. Well, you got millions of people. But I think it's a pretty efficient system. It goes just about every place in New York City. And it's not as bad as they're saying that it is.
Yeah. I think you're right. It's a great way to get from one part of the city to the other, and inexpensively, by the way.
Yeah, and nobody in their right mind is going to drive in New York City, which is, I guess, maybe I'm not in my right mind, but I'm doing it for a living.
As long as you're talking about driving in New York, Uber concealed a major data breach. This was really something. They kept this thing quiet, which is terrible. 57 million people had their information exposed.
Yeah, well, I got to tell you, since the day, and it's not that I have an axe to grind because it's not my competition, but, since the day they started, there's been just nothing but problems. They mess around with the fees. The drivers have to wait for their money. There's been a bunch of sexual kinds of harassment, and the whole thing is just kind of really sleazy. But, you know, they've overwhelmed the city with the cabs all over the place, and they are competition for the yellow cabs, but boy, do those guys dream up ways to get into trouble.
Yeah. I will tell you this, anytime I've ever driven a taxi cab, I can tell you this, guaranteed, ridden in a cab in New York City, and paid with a $10 bill or a $20 bill, I can guarantee you my identity was not stolen.
Yeah, well, that's it. And, I mean, don't make a bigger deal out of it. You get in the cab, good morning, how are you? Fine, take a ride, give the guy the money, and that's over and done with. You don't need your entire history on a credit card. And as a matter of fact, yellow cabs, we have the same system. Where if you're really dying to use a credit card, you can use a credit card. But, you know, for a $5, $6, $7 cab, don't you have any money in your pocket?
Yeah, that's funny though.
How far
Some
can
people
you get?
don't travel with any money anymore. It's crazy.
Yeah.
Any cash in pocket. All right, Peter, interesting. Best tour in New York City. You have to do this tour, especially if you're coming down for the holidays. You want to get in advance. You want to get a hold of Peter immediately to set this up.
And I take credit cards.
And he does take credit cards.
Good for
so
you.
there you go. All right, Peter, enjoy the week, and we'll talk again next week. Peter Franklin, the Gabby Cabby. It's Gabby.com is where you'll get all the details.